Good morning. I got the generator back out on the bench here, and I've been reading all the comments, and I appreciate everybody's comment. A majority of the guys that have been commenting on this recommended for me to put seafoam in here. I have to see how much my local hardware store gets for it and make sure I get enough cash on me. But also, a good friend of mine, Brandon, who does not post but does email me, and he's John from Arkansas's mentor, as I mentioned before, very knowledgeable on things like this as well as electronics. And he says whatever you put in here is just going to pull up into the carburetor. You got to clean, clean, clean. That's the thing. So he's recommending for me to take the carb out and clean it. I'm going to get you down close in here, and I want to show you exactly what it looks like. I'm using the Kodak PlayTouch, and I want to get you down in there so that you can plainly see what I have to do in order to get this off, because it's much better. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Yes, this is a Kawasaki engine, but the generator is made by GENERAC, and the model number is down here on the tag, which has already been posted on my last video. But anyways, a couple of my viewers, I believe it was Fino, gave me the information on this particular engine, which also gives the breakdown for the carburetor and stuff, but parts are no longer available for the carburetor. First of all, there is apparently a rubber gasket here. I'm sorry I have to use my fingers. I don't have anything to point with. See that? It's a rubber gasket. It's like a, so, okay, so it looks like maybe somebody had replaced that at one time. But then I got to deal with the governor thing. Now, what I had done is when I first got this would not move at all. And I put some penetrating oil I sprayed in there and everything, and I got it so it moves a lot easier now. This is the choke. Now I'm not going to turn this because this is set for about 90% choke closure, and it runs at that point. I haven't started it today, and I wouldn't be putting my hand on the muffler if I did. This was off. This was down here like this. It goes in that little hole there. So I just stuck it back in. It's for the crankcase ventilation. So this is a mechanical plastic, and it turns. But like I say, it's set exactly where it runs the best. And while it was running, it was going pop, 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 like that. Sound like in the muffler. And the speed is all over the place. So the voltage, I want to put an analog meter on this. The voltage is going up from 130 to 137 volts, 133. It was all over the place because the engine is not running at a steady speed, and no matter where I set this, it didn't seem to do too much. This screw right here, let me take this off so you can see better. I adjusted it, and I got the speed to vary a little bit. This one here, I had this out. I sprayed CRC cleaner. I didn't have any carb cleaner, but that should be okay. And it has a little spring on it. It's like a needle. And I turned it all the way in. After I sprayed it, I had it out, then I put it back in. I turned it all the way in till it locked down. Not hard, but, And then I turned it out 1.5 turns, because I remember that from car carburetors. So that's what I did with that, and adjusting that didn't seem to make any difference. I could turn it all the way in and lock it in. I didn't leave it turned that way, but it didn't seem to make any difference. The engine just ran the same anyways. So I turned it out 1.5 turns. I left it. I was playing with this more. This had more effect on it than this one. See, let me get you a better look at that. Looking at the other side here, I don't want to mess around. See how that spring is on there? Now, there's only one hole it goes into, so that's getting that out and getting it back in again. You know, I've messed these things up on lawnmower engines before, the governor, and I'm very leery of touching something that I don't know much about. You know, all the guys are telling me, you know, clean the carburetor, clean the carburetor. Easier said than done. So, you know, I don't know how much the seafoam is, but I can't lose anything by putting seafoam in here and running it through. You know, Don, I'm a junk collector, commented, yes, you are correct, Don. It is a 750 watt, so it's good for, looks like 6.2 watts or something like that. Okay, so what threw me off is S1000, which would indicate that it's a 1000 watt generator. Of course, as I said in the video, it's, you know, the surge might be 1000, but I doubt it's even that. And that's not a problem because it'll run the it'll run my water pump that if I ever need it. There's also a cover here, but I have no idea what's in there. There's a Phillips screw here, but I don't mess around with things that I don't understand. This may look a little wet. I just put a little 3-in-1 oil on the top of the head bolts because they were rusty, you know. And it's burned off now, but I had put some down here in the event that I ever had to take this off. Mostly for the carb. I don't really want to take the carb off because I know I'm going to screw it up. There's been more than one time that I tried fixing a carburetor on a lawnmower, and put them back together again, and it never ran. At least before I touched it, it was surging all over the place. At least the mower ran. But when I get through with the carburetor, I have never successfully repaired a carburetor on any lawnmower, and I've done a few. I always mess them up, always. Don't ask me what happens. They just don't work when these magic hands of the old 64 goat gets into them. You may laugh, but it's the truth.
This ain't no dog and pony show. What do you think this is anyways?
On the bottom there's 2 bolts and a bracket. There's 2 bolts on the bottom of the tank, and there's 2 bolts right here. Okay, that's not a problem, getting it off there. The problem comes in is I got a Phillips screw here, and 2 Phillips screws. One I can get a screwdriver on, and this one here to the left of it, I don't know if you can see it, right to the left, I cannot get a screwdriver on that at all because this is in the way. So if I had to remove that, what I would have to do is to disconnect this. And I'm terrified of messing around with this because it's in there and I don't know how it's hooked in. And I know what's going to happen. I'm going to take a needle nose pliers and I'm going to bend it out, unhook it out of here. And I screwed up a chainsaw trying to fix these things. I screwed them up. So I have to take this bolt out, which is hard to get at, but I might be able to do it. Take this bolt out, leave the carburetor on, and pull the whole thing off at once. But this is the problem right here. Like I say, this was all frozen up when I got it. But after I cleaned it, it seems to be even worse running. I got it running after a while, but it's very, very, very hard to start. I had to use starting fluid on it, and they let it sit for a while, you know, and then try it, it'll work. This is oil right here. I just put 3-in-1 oil on there, so that's not leaking or anything. That's just, you know, I shined it up with 3-in-1 oil on a cloth and went all over everything. I don't know what this is. This was there. Might be a shut-off or something, I don't know. And there is a shut-off switch here, on and off switch. So what I'm going to try to do now, this has been sitting in the shed. It was running. I left it exactly that way. Yesterday I had this running for about a half an hour, and putting meters on it, it was reading about 62 to 67 cycles. It was going all over the place. I couldn't get it to read. It wouldn't stay steady, so I got a couple of meters that'll read frequency. When it was reading 60 cycles or 61 cycles, it was putting out 137 volts. And I have a couple of good meters that are fairly accurate. And my analog plug-in meter from Radio Shack that I've used read about 130 volts. So this would be good for lighting. Get you off a macro here so I can get out a little further. This would be good for lighting and running the Harbor Freight pump, which I'm going to show you now. It's very dark in the shed here. I got a light, but not at this end of the shed. This is the Harbor Freight pump. You might have seen a video on it. I mounted it on a board and a handle. I can carry it so I can pump water out of my brook. It's like a $69 pump at the time, and I put a valve on it so I can open it and take the top screw out and put a funnel in there to prime the pump. So if I need to pull water out of my brook, because we live in a mobile home, and if I need to pull water out of the brook to fill up buckets to flush the toilet in case we lose power, that's what this is for, so I don't have to use my Coleman generator. My Coleman 1850, which we used to run the house on, the refrigerator and a few lights, and that's like 60 pounds or so, and it's a little awkward, but I can carry it out there. But that's one of the reasons why I bought that little generator. So it's not going to go to waste, and it's perfect because I can carry it right down, and I got a garden hose on for the pump, and then I bring it down to the brook. Well, there's no water in the brook now. I bring it down near the brook, like there's about like 25 feet, maybe less, hose coming from the pump down the bank and in the brook with a strainer on the end of it. We're supposed to get a lot of rain, so we need it. As you can see, there's not much in there. But if we ever lost power, and I've tested this, I've done this on a video. You have to look back. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago. You drop a hose in there, and I've done it already. Drop it in there, and it's got to come up. It's got to pump up the bank, and I'd set the generator roughly about in here. In other words, where it's comfortable, because it's slanted. It's sloped. And then have a small hose coming out, and then I can, once I prime the pump, then I can fill it. So the generator can go down here. So it makes it a lot easier than to haul that Coleman 1850, which is a 1500 watt generator actually. It's not needed. It's too big for this type of work, and that's what I primarily bought it for. What I'm going to do now is, well, I started to say, all right, I'm going to try to start this again, but I'm not going to touch anything here. What I started to say is I ran this for half an hour, okay, yesterday. Once I got this choke set, it was very, very, very difficult to get this thing started. I must have had to pull this 40 or 50 times, and I wanted, it's a wonder that this recoil didn't break. You're pulling, pulling, and pulling. The guy said it won't stay running, and the only way you can get it to go at all is to shoot starting fluid in here, which, from what I understand, is not really good to be used on small engines. But that's how you get it running. You just took this air cleaner off, which I showed you on the other video, and you just shot it in with the choke wide open. All right, I'm not going to touch this choke. This choke is about 75 to 85% closed, maybe 90% closed. It's almost totally closed. It's got a little tiny hole in there, so it's not totally closed all the way. Anyways, my videos are too long. I flap too damn much. I ran this for a good half hour, like I said, and checked all the voltages and the frequency and everything else. Then I shut it off and left it off for about an hour, but it was still warm. The muffler was cold, but the block was still warm. I pulled once, and she started right up, not touching this choke. Remember, this choke is manual. There is no there is no spring or anything, or not an automatic thing. If there is, there's a hole here, but I have no idea whether anything else goes on this. But it's a little dangerous. It's not good. You get your fingers burnt next to this muffler trying to adjust it. This turns easy now, but once the engine's heated up, this thing locks in. You can't move it without turning it with the pliers, and you will break it, because this is only plastic. Plastic in a metal body, or aluminum body, I guess is what the carburetor is. But there's more involved. That's why I wanted to get you some close-ups. It's not a simple thing as taking the carburetor out. It's part of the tank. And if it's like my S1500 GENERAC, which I told you before about and had videos on it, it's a little different carburetor, but it also sits on the gas tank. And if you remove this, there's usually a diaphragm under here and a little spring. Well, what happens is that little spring falls out. You put it in, and it's supposed to go vertical. It goes sideways like this, so the thing no longer works. So I do not want to take this carburetor apart if it's got one of them little springs underneath. I can't tell by the exploded view diagrams that Fino sent me. I looked very, very hard to see, and I can't tell if it has a spring under here. If it just has the pickup tubes and no little spring's going to come flying out of here when I take this off, I'll risk it. What I'm going to do, though, is to dump this over, like guys have suggested, and dump out the gas and see if there's, and to blow it out with an air compressor and clean it out. I will do that. Run the gas to a coffee filter, put it back in, because the gas that's in here is fresher than what I got in the shed. But she started on an hour later, she started on the first pull. I'm going to see if she'll run at all. So let me get you on a tripod, and we'll give it a try. This is going to be the first try now. I haven't had this thing running since yesterday afternoon. I'm not touching the choke at all, because it don't seem to make any difference whether... Well, actually, if I close the choke totally, it seems to want to start. But because, like I say, it started right up on the first pull after being off for 1 hour without touching the choke. The choke is about 90% closed right now. So let's give it a try. This switch is on. Here we go. Let me put this hose back in. I'm going to have to close the choke. Hear that popping? Pop, 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 pop. That's what it was doing yesterday. I was not on video when you heard that. I have no idea, but my lawnmower does that too, but not as much. Pop, 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 pop. I don't know what that is. The plug is good, clean. I pulled the plug yesterday. But the voltage is all over the place. In other words, the RPM is up and down, up and down, up and down. The choke is about 3/4 closed, and I'm going to try to open it a little bit and see what it does. Choke is about half open. I didn't open up the air cleaner to look, but I'm estimating it's about half open right now. Choke is completely open now. Now this is the best it wouldn't run before, but obviously I got to close the choke up again. Roughly about half open, I would say, half closed. It doesn't want to run full open. So maybe running seafoam in there, if it's more than $10 a bottle, I'll have to wait till next week for that. But why it's popping like that, I don't know. You engine experts can tell me why it pops. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. But overall, it seems to be getting just a little bit better. Maybe I won't have to take it apart. But it's not stable, as you can plainly see. And here, the pop, pop, pop. I hope the camera picks that up. Maybe you guys can tell me why it's doing that. I'll try to adjust the choke again. It didn't seem to make any difference when I adjusted the screws though. The popping still went on. So I don't know what that is. But it has very good compression. But sometimes I pull on that thing when I'm trying to start it after it's warmed up. And I tip the whole thing right over. So there's a lot of compression there. I opened the choke just a wee bit. It didn't like that. I opened the choke up all the way. I closed it down about halfway. Seems to like that better. Alright, I shut it down. Alright, I'm not on macro, but the choke is about halfway. It seems to run better. Actually, it's running better now, even though you got the popping and the instability, but at least it wants to run about half choke. Before it was like 3/4 closed. This time it's only half closed. And I just turned the engine off here by way of this. So I'm going to dump this over like it was suggested. And clean this tank out best I can. Remember the guys just said turn it over. I guess I can do that without harming the... yeah, I should be able to tip this on this end here, upright, so that the generator head is faced vertically to the, skyward. And dump this out. Try to flush this out with compressed air. And put this gas or run this through a strainer or whatever, or fresh gas in here. And if there's a lot of dirt in here, well, that's one thing. I don't know what's in this tank. I don't know how bad it is or whatever. And I'll, if the seafoam is not too expensive, I'll pick up some today. I'll put the 2 capfuls in the tank that one of the fellas said. I misunderstood him and I thought he said 2 cupfuls. Capfuls, okay. That's what happens when you're blind. You can't read half the writing that's up there. Anyways, that's what I'll do. And if it's clean in there, maybe the seafoam will straighten it out. Although Brandon says to take it apart and clean it, I've showed you what I'm up against here. To some of you guys that are experienced with this, it's probably a piece of cake for you. It's not for me. You got to remember now, I failed a lot of times on small engine carburetors. And I don't want to, at least this thing is working. It's not working good, but it'll work enough that I can pump water out of the brook if I need to. If I take this carburetor apart and it doesn't work at all, well, I'm screwed, blued, and tattooed, as I always said. You're not going to get a carburetor, although I think Don told me, I'm a junk collector, told me you can get them for $50. Well, I don't have $50, and by the way, that radio sale fell through. He had a family emergency, so I'm back to square one with that Catlin radio. Story of my life. All right. But anyways, that money wasn't going to go for anything like this. So if I can clean the carb without taking it apart, by maybe forcing seafoam up through there, but I'll clean the tank first. I will follow those instructions. Flush it out as much as I can. And we'll see what happens. Alright, so thank you very much for watching. And I'll give you an update on this after I get the seafoam. If I get it today, I may make a video on it. It's going to rain tomorrow, pretty heavy. So if not, it will be the next few days whenever I can get to it.